Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever opened a bag of chips telling yourself you would have just a few, and then looked down 20 minutes later to find the bag completely empty? Have you ever finished an entire sleeve of cookies and felt genuinely confused about how it happened? Have you ever eaten past the point of fullness, past the point where your body was clearly done, and still found yourself reaching for more? If that sounds familiar, I want you to understand something important before we go any further. This is not simply a lack of willpower. This is not weakness. This is not a personal character flaw that separates you from people who seem to have more self-control around food. What you experienced in those moments is strongly influenced by how modern foods are designed to interact with your brain's natural hunger and reward systems. And most people are not aware of what is actually happening inside the brain when that occurs. Because the conversation around ultra-processed food almost always focuses on the ingredients, the sugar, the oils, the artificial colors, the sodium. And yes, those ingredients matter. But what almost nobody explains is the neurological architecture behind why these foods feel so hard to stop eating, why your brain responds to them differently compared to most natural foods, and why food manufacturers have spent decades studying and optimizing these effects. That is what this video is about. Let's start with something called the bliss point. In the 1970s, a food scientist named Howard Moskowitz was hired by major food companies to solve a specific problem. The problem was not how to make food taste good. Food already tasted good. The problem was how to make food extremely appealing so people would want more of it. What Moskowitz discovered through extensive testing was that there is a precise combination, a balance of sugar, fat, and salt, at which the brain's pleasure response increases significantly, while satiety signals may become less noticeable. He called it the bliss point, and once it was identified, many food manufacturers began formulating products around this balance. Here is what makes the bliss point so biologically interesting. In nature, no food typically contains high levels of sugar, fat, and salt all together in the same proportions as many ultra-processed products. Think about this for a moment. Natural foods are usually primarily one thing: sweet like fruit, fatty like nuts, or salty like seafood. The natural food world rarely delivers all three signals to your brain at the same time at high intensity, which means your brain has limited experience regulating intake when all three are combined in this way. The natural satiety signals, the ones that tell you that you have had enough, may not respond the same way in this environment. Now let's talk about dopamine, because this is where the story gets deeply important. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter involved in motivation and reward. It is not exactly the feeling of pleasure itself, it is more about anticipation and drive. It pushes you to repeat behaviors that your brain perceives as rewarding. Historically, dopamine helped humans survive, encouraging us to seek food, safety, and connection. Modern ultra-processed foods can stimulate this system in a very strong way. When you eat something like a potato chip, your brain receives multiple signals at once: rapid carbohydrates, salt, and fat, which together can create a reinforcing loop that encourages continued eating. Some research has shown that ultra-processed foods can trigger behavioral responses in certain people that resemble patterns seen in other highly rewarding experiences. And here is what makes this even more significant. Your brain adapts to repeated stimulation. When dopamine is triggered frequently and intensely, your brain may reduce sensitivity over time. This is sometimes referred to as downregulation. And downregulation means that over time, you may need stronger stimulation to experience the same level of reward. So foods that once felt highly satisfying may feel less so, and more may be needed to achieve that same feeling. At the same time, whole natural foods, which provide a more moderate and balanced response, may start to feel less exciting by comparison. This is not permanent damage, it is adaptation. And it can reverse. Now let me talk about something that almost nobody in the nutrition space addresses: the role of texture engineering. Most people think food companies make ultra-processed foods taste good. That is true, but incomplete. What they also do is carefully design the sensory experience, texture, sound, dissolution rate, and mouthfeel to influence how the brain perceives the food. For example, some snack foods are designed to dissolve quickly in the mouth. This is sometimes referred to as vanishing caloric density. When food disappears quickly, the brain may not fully register how much has been consumed, which can make it easier to eat more. The crunch sound is not accidental either. Research suggests that crisp, crunchy sounds can enhance the perception of freshness and satisfaction, which can encourage continued eating. Food manufacturers even study the sound and texture of foods to better understand these effects. Now let me talk about flavor layering. Natural foods tend to have a clear flavor cycle. It rises and then fades. Some ultra-processed foods are designed with lingering or incomplete flavor profiles, which may keep the brain engaged and encourage another bite. Now, a lot of people ask about supplements during dietary changes. It's always best to focus first on improving overall diet quality and consult a qualified professional before adding supplements. So, what actually happens over time with regular ultra-processed food consumption? Number 1. Your brain's reward sensitivity may shift. Whole foods can feel less stimulating, while highly processed foods feel more rewarding. Number 2. Hunger and fullness signals can become less clear, making it easier to eat more than needed. Number 3. Your gut and brain communication may be affected, since diet plays a major role in shaping the gut microbiome, which is closely linked to overall health. So what do you do with this information? The first step is awareness. Understanding that this is not just about discipline, it is also about how food interacts with your biology. The next step is adjusting your environment. If certain foods are always available, your brain is more likely to respond to them. Reducing exposure can significantly reduce cravings. And finally, reintroduce whole foods consistently. Over time, your brain can recalibrate. Natural foods can begin to feel more satisfying again as your system adjusts. This process takes time, but it works. And it matters, because it means you are not stuck. If you want to understand which foods support your energy, focus, and long-term health, the next video breaks it down step by step. Take care of yourself. And I will see you there.